The African Union's dilemma in Sudan. Lifting Sudan's suspension would not immediately end the war nor restore constitutional order, but it would give the AU a party to talk to. Sudan's Foreign Minister Mohiddin Salem made a rare appearance last week at the African Union (AU), addressing an informal session of the African Union Peace and Security Council (PSC) in Addis Ababa on February 12th. He was there at Egypt's invitation, which characterized Sudan's continued exclusion as unacceptable. Cairo, which holds the Council's rotating presidency for February, has made Sudan's reinstatement a priority, scheduling informal ministerial consultations where Sudan, currently a suspended member, could speak. Sudan has been suspended by the AU since October 26, 2021, one day after General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan of the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, dissolved the civilian government and declared a state of emergency alongside his then-deputy, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo Hemedi, whose Rapid Support Forces, RSF, are now locked in a nearly 3-year war with the SAF. The legal basis is the African Union's prohibition on states that have experienced an unconstitutional change of government, a principle established by the 2000 Lomé Declaration and later codified in Article 25 of the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance. Despite these legal obstacles and the PSC's final decision to leave Sudan's suspension in place, Khartoum has kept pressing. Speaking to the PSC, Sudan's Foreign Minister Salem made his country's case for reinstatement, starting by challenging the legal basis of the suspension. The 2021 coup, or corrective measures as he called it, he claimed, did not constitute a coup against a democratically elected government, the threshold required under the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance. The power-sharing arrangement in place at the time, he noted, had also failed to deliver on the basic institutional requirements of the transition, namely, the formation of the Transitional Parliament and the Constitutional Court, and had thus forfeited any claim to legitimacy. The argument was technically correct. The government that was ousted was not an elected one, but the result of a power-sharing arrangement between civilian technocrats and military figures, installed after the 2019 revolution with the aim of steering the country to elections. Still, the move sparked widespread protests and was broadly unpopular. The AU suspension of Sudan was a reflection of this legitimacy deficit. Secondly, Salem also pointed to inconsistency in the AU's own procedures. Unlike in Chad, where the organization dispatched a fact-finding mission before determining whether a coup had occurred, no such mission was ever sent to Khartoum. He invited the council to rectify this now. Thirdly, while pressing for reinstatement, Salem also laid out the case against those fueling the conflict. The RSF, he told the council, have also received advanced weaponry, drones and mercenaries from foreign parties, a reference to the United Arab Emirates, UAE, which denies the accusation. Reporting on the conflict has implicated the UAE, Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army, and Ethiopia on the side of the RSF. There have also been reports of the Sudanese army receiving assistance from Egypt, Turkey, and Iran, and political backing from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. We are protecting Africa's back by confronting this conspiracy, Salem told the media after the meeting. This, ultimately, is why Sudan wants its chair back at the African Union. An active membership would allow Khartoum to name names, rally continental support, and invoke the principle of non-interference against its adversaries. 4 years now, Khartoum has lobbied relentlessly for reinstatement at the African Union. Boren even toured 5 West African nations early last year with an AU return on the agenda. But why should the military-led government care what the AU thinks when it already occupies Sudan's seat at the United Nations? The UN never suspended Sudan, and more broadly, the General Assembly does not engage in legitimacy audits. The AU suspension is different in that it is a public judgment on the legitimacy of an administration. Therefore, lifting the suspension in Sudan's case would constitute a regional certification that the army-led government is both the de jure and de facto authority in Sudan. This matters, above all, for the battle over how the war is described and framed. International reporting and diplomatic discourse default to framing Sudan's conflict as a confrontation between two warring generals in a civil war, a symmetry that the national army finds both inaccurate and politically damaging. A restored seat in the AU would give weight to Khartoum's narrative that the war is in fact a legitimate state authority battling an armed rebellion. The challenge is that the AU, while occupying solid legal grounds and keeping Sudan out, is trapped by its own precedents. For decades, the organization's application of its own anti-coup norms have been conspicuously selective. Chad's Mahamat Idris Deby took over as head of a transitional military council in 2021 after his father's death. But the AU, citing the country's exceptional security situation and role in fighting regional terrorism, declined to designate the takeover a coup and stood aside when he contested and won the 2024 presidential election. More recently, Gabon's Brice Oligui Nguema and Guinea's Mamadi Doumbouya, who seized power in 2023 and 2021 respectively, waited less than 2 years and nearly 5 years for their suspensions to be lifted. They both returned to Addis Ababa last week as elected presidents with 95% and 87% of their country's votes respectively. In all three cases, the AU watched as coup leaders did precisely what Article 25 was intended to prevent. That clause forbids perpetrators of unconstitutional change of government from being allowed to participate in elections or hold any position of responsibility in political institutions of their state. Sudan's generals have watched and learned. They have appointed a civilian prime minister and are now moving to form a transitional legislative council with aligned civilian forces. That prime minister, Kamal Idris, took the government's roadmap to the United Nations in December and to the Munich Security Conference days ago, presenting a plan that calls for RSF disarmament, a transitional political process, and national dialogue, followed by free elections. The African Union Commission chairman, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, previously endorsed the initiative, calling it a credible foundation for sustainable peace. The endorsement, however, has not translated into clarity. Asked in October what Sudan still needs to do for reinstatement, Mohammed El-Amin Youssef, an official in the chairperson's own office, would only say that all the conditions are not yet complete. He did not specify what conditions remain unmet, when they might be met, or how the AU measures progress. The opposition's Somaud alliance, led by former Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, was also in Addis Ababa last week to make the argument against restoring Sudan's seat. The reasons for the freeze still exist, spokesman Bakri El-Jak told Radio Debanga. In the view of the civilian coalition, the EU should not grant legitimacy to any party when the conditions that produced the 2021 coup remain unchanged. The AU knows Somaud has a point. Yet the organization remains caught between the inconsistent application of its own rules and its increasingly diminishing role in Sudan's peacemaking processes. For 2 years, Sudan diplomacy has been driven by the Quad, the US, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt, a grouping that has sidelined the African continent's premier political body. Now the field is growing more crowded. President Donald Trump's senior advisor for Arab and African affairs, Masad Boulos, disclosed in recent weeks that the Trump administration's newly minted Board of Peace, BOP, has now also entered the game, rendering the AU even more relevant. But the AU's peripheral role in Sudan diplomacy is largely of its own making. The AU established a high-level panel on Sudan in early 2024 tasked with diplomatic engagement across Sudan's fractured political landscape. An expanded mechanism was formed the previous year with the aim of convening the UN, neighboring states, and other regional actors to coordinate mediation and prevent the fragmented peace initiatives that have plagued diplomatic efforts to end Sudan's war. Both were launched with ambitious goals, and both have since vanished from view, overtaken by more energetic mediation frameworks. The AU has also been spectacularly ineffective in restraining the external actors who have turned Sudan into a playground for regional rivalries, many of them fellow member states. The host of the AU's headquarters, Ethiopia, was revealed by Reuters to be running a secret training camp for RSF fighters on its soil. Kenya, another regional linchpin, hosted the RSF-affiliated Parallel Government's founding ceremony last year in Nairobi, drawing accusations from Khartoum and the AU itself. Egypt, the current PSC president, has been conducting drone strikes against RSF convoys from a secret base on its southern border for at least 6 months, according to satellite imagery and officials cited by the New York Times. The AU's sanctions subcommittee has never identified, let alone penalized, any external supporter of either belligerent. The Council's February 12th communiqué belatedly tasked this subcommittee, working with African intelligence bodies, to propose measures within 3 months. The fact that it took 3 years to reach a starting point is a stunning measure of the organization's impotence. Against that backdrop, lifting Sudan's suspension would not immediately end the war nor restore constitutional order, but it would give the AU a party to talk to. Whether that will translate into leverage or merely confer legitimacy on another military government is the dilemma the AU now faces.